Jay, could you discuss just a little bit more about when somebody is looking for a little bit more time for like inspection periods and things like that?
Okay, let's talk specifically about a request for an extension of time for an inspection response. There are other things you can do, but that one's probably the one that comes up the most where people are asking me for advice. One of the things that I think everybody knows is that in our original purchase agreement, buyers are allotted a certain number of days to do their inspections. The new purchase agreement as of January 1 of this year says that if anything requires further inspection or investigation, then the buyer has a little bit more time. Again, both of those time frames are filled in by the buyer, but the change in January is that if any one thing requires more time for investigation, the entire inspection response requirement from the buyer's side is extended to the end of the total of the 2 sets of days in that paragraph in the purchase agreement. Here's what I'm hearing a lot. First thing is either side, but right now it's more often than not the buyer says, we want these 27 things repaired. All of them are significant. We think all of them are defects, and you have 7 hours to respond. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but that's the perspective that the buyer is giving to the seller and the list agent. So they're already putting the seller in a bad mood by not giving them an appropriate amount of time to respond. Even if every single thing they ask for truly is a defect, truly is significant, which is the word in the law now, not major, truly is a significant concern, the buyer can't reasonably expect the seller who gets their inspection response on Friday afternoon to respond Monday morning. The seller should have plenty of reasonable time to find contractors to come out and review, get estimates, see what they can and cannot do financially, whether they want to move forward, whether they want to get out. All of those things, if you're going to be reasonable, need to have some time to take care of. Okay? So as a buyer agent, please train your buyer up front. We don't care how bad it is. We haven't even had the inspection yet. But once we get it, let's pretend we're the seller. Let's ask ourselves, how long would it take us to address these questions before we send over and throw it on top of the seller? Okay? So we're not even talking about an extension, we're talking about the first one. Make an appropriate suggestion for how long the seller has to do their investigation and respond to the buyer's inspection response. The next thing I see a lot of is we have until Monday at 6 o'clock as the buyer to provide our inspection response. And Monday at 5:30, the buyer still hasn't gotten all of his quotes from his contractors. He hasn't done his legwork. And a half an hour before his time runs out, he asks for more time. The form is very simple. It also says if the buyer makes a reasonable request, the seller must grant it. If it's going the other way, if the seller makes a reasonable request, the buyer must grant it. But don't put yourself in that kind of a trick box. If you're representing the buyer, and it's the day before your response is due and you still don't have some things back yet, ask then for 3 or 4 more extra days. And in your cover letter say, just in case we want 3 or 4 more days, the instant we get the last thing we need, we'll send you the inspection response. It could be tomorrow the way we planned anyway. But don't try to force the time frame. Don't be lazy about it. Don't just say, well, I have until tomorrow. Go ahead and get in front of the game. Same thing that the seller will do. They'll say, hey, we'll only do these 4 things, and you have until 6 o'clock tonight to accept it or reject it. I've had both sides where the seller or the buyer have said, we're not going to give you an extension of time. Even if it's presented reasonably, if it's presented timely. Now we've gotten back into my theme for the whole day. Keep your buyer or your seller's inspection out of the deal. Not inspection, emotion out of the deal. The more emotional it gets, the harder it's going to be to keep that transaction moving forward. It's a simple form. Hand it to the other side as quickly as you know that there might be an issue getting something done on time. Keep the emotion out. You're going to be a whole lot better off.